Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a predictions video once again on the channel. We're going to talk all things that is going to go down in today's NASCAR Cup Series race at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, what to look out for as far as how the racing may go today, as well as my predictions for who will run well and who will not. First and foremost, like and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content as we get into the rest of this video. So coming into Atlanta today, I didn't know what to expect. During the week, I was thinking more that it was going to be a train race. It was going to be harder to run 2 and 3 wide like you would see at Daytona and Talladega. But after watching highlights of the Truck Series race yesterday and watching about the final 50 to 60 laps of the Xfinity Series race yesterday, I've come to my conclusion that I think we will see more side-by-side racing today than what I was originally expecting. It seemed like there was actually an outside lane that was prevalent, and it was still hard to stop the runs even with the slower speeds, generally speaking, compared to a Daytona or Talladega. The top speeds in the trucks and the Xfinity Series was about 180 miles an hour going into the corner versus it'd be 190 plus going into, say, turn 1 or turn 1 at Talladega or Daytona. So I don't think the runs are going to be any slower necessarily. The runs are still happening quick. There's still moves that are being able to be made. And I think we saw that really at the end of the Xfinity Series race yesterday when Ty Gibbs made a last lap pass for the win on Ryan Sieg. That Sieg had to block the top. Gibbs was able to get the run off the outside, charge past the cars who were on the bottom, found the hole, and was able to obviously clear. Then they were 3 wide back in traffic trying to race it out to the finish. 3 wide will be a lot tougher, I will say. It definitely seems like handling is an issue. There were cars moving around quite a bit in the middle of the corners. I specifically saw in turns 3 and 4, it's almost like the bumps are still there even though they got repaved. Cars are moving around quite a bit. Mid-corner speeds are obviously up. They're up over 170 miles an hour or right around 170 miles an hour, maybe in the high 160s, which is definitely up from what you would usually see at Atlanta, especially with the older surface. So although it is repaved and there's more grip there, they're probably able to hold it more flat out, but in the draft when the speeds are up higher, it's going to be a handful in the pack. I think you're going to see a patient race at the beginning compared to the truck and the Xfinity race yesterday. Large part of it, obviously, it's twice the length of the Xfinity Series race from yesterday. It's a 500-miler. They're going to try to take care of their equipment. Obviously, you're not going to see them go guns blazing there at the very beginning, but I would expect a lot of racing at the end of the stages for sure. We saw in the Daytona 500, really anytime they go to a super speedway, Daytona and Talladega, that's where calamity ends up happening, is right at the end of the stages, the drivers in the top 10 trying to get all the stage points they can, and we usually see the big one. We saw that at Daytona this year in the 500 at the end of stage 1. That's where the big one ended up happening. We saw it multiple times last season at the end of the stages as well. Would not be surprised if that ends up happening in today's race also. We could potentially, if I had to predict a big one, it would be towards the end of the stages in today's race. As far as the predictions go, this is tough because this is a new Atlanta surface. It's hard to take prior years at Atlanta, throw that in. Kevin Harvick, a driver who's really good at Atlanta, but he's not the greatest super speedway racer in recent years. A little shaky on guys like him and others who I won't talk about. But as far as the drivers I will talk about, these are drivers that have had speed on the mile and a half this year and guys that have had speed this year on the super speedway at Daytona. Only factoring in the next-gen stats with this. So if you ran well throughout speed weeks at Daytona and you had decent pace on mile and a half, so I think that's going to play in to a big effect, because you look at, say, the Xfinity race, the front runners at the front of the field weren't all guys that are only good super speedway racers. I mean, Ty Gibbs, I don't really think of him as being a great super speedway racer, but he is really good on the mile and a half, and that JGR Toyota is really good on the mile and a half. This is still a mile and a half racetrack, so handling, like I mentioned, is still going to be a factor in this one, maybe even more so than Daytona or Talladega. So for that reason, here are my stats. We're going to start off with the sleeper pick because this is the one I'm most confident on. It's probably the category I think I've nailed the most this year as far as my wins versus loss record goes, and that's Eric Almirola will get a top 10 today for Stewart-Haas Racing. He has finished in the top 12 every race this season, but you look at specifically the 2 intermediates and Daytona, he finished top 10 in all 3 races, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th place finish. Between the Daytona 500 and then the 2 intermediates. at Auto Club and at Las Vegas, specifically the Vegas race, which was a mile and a half, just like Atlanta. Size-wise is a mile and a half as well. So Almirola is my prediction there. Another sleeper prediction I feel very confident with is Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe had speed at Auto Club. He ran top 5 most of the day. Can't exactly off the top of my head remember where he finished, but he ran top 5 most of the day. Las Vegas, he was a little bit slower in that race, so that could be a little bit concerning, but he had speed at Auto Club, intermediate, and he had speed at Daytona. He finished top 4 in his dual race, top 3 in his dual race, actually, and then he ended up also finishing in the top 5 in the Daytona 500 itself with a 3rd place finish in that race. So look out for Chase Briscoe. He's also on the pole today, so he's got track position. I think Briscoe's got a really, really good shot to maybe contend for back-to-back wins. As far as the drivers I have to not run well, I'm probably going to stick to the Toyota camp on this one. They haven't had great speed on the intermediate tracks, and at Daytona this year, they were kind of outnumbered like they are on every other super speedway aspect, and they're probably the lesser of the 3 manufacturers that I would contend for the win, excluding a guy like Denny Hamlin, who is really good on these types of racetracks on super speedways. He's the best super speedway racer, in my opinion, that's currently in NASCAR today. But for Denny Hamlin, I'm going to actually make the bold prediction that he does not get a top 10 today. I don't think he gets his first top 10 of the year today. He struggled at Daytona and Speed Weeks earlier this year. He finished 15th in his dual race, 1 lap down, and then he also had a 37th place finish. He was caught up in that big one at the end of stage 1 in the Daytona 500. Obviously, that was nothing of his own fault, but still, he was caught up in it, and he was in that bad situation because he had a bad finish in his dual race. So, frankly, that's not good, and he hasn't had speed on intermediate tracks this season. At Auto Club, he ran outside the top 10 all day, finished outside the top 10, and then at Las Vegas, he ran top 10 most of the day, had that self-inflicted error when he came out of the pits and spun the race car. But that ended up finishing him 32nd. That's why he's in the points hole he's in right now, and that's why I am predicting Denny Hamlin to not have a top 10 today. I would keep him out of your lineups. As far as another driver to keep out of your lineups today, I would lean on Martin Truex Jr. Again, Toyotas haven't had great speed. Now, he has probably had the most speed between him and Kyle Busch in the entire Toyota camp and the Toyota field on the intermediates, but he is not a good super speedway racer. He did win 2 stages in the Daytona 500, but he didn't make it to the end. He's never won on a super speedway in his NASCAR Cup Series career. So Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, for Joe Gibbs Racing. I say both of them do not get a top 10 today. I would definitely keep both out of your lineups. And now to the must-have picks. Going to keep it pretty simple. I've been high on Fords this year. I think overall they're still the top team in NASCAR. Chevrolet, on some people's aspects, would probably be top, but I think when you just strictly look at only Penske and Stewart-Haas Racing, they're right there. They both have 2 wins. Obviously, the Chevrolet and Fords both have 2 wins, and the super speedways is where Ford has seemed to dominate, especially in years past. This year through Speed Weeks, we had a Ford win at Daytona in both dual races, and we also had a Ford win the Daytona 500 for 2 different teams. For Roush Fenway even won both the dual races, sweeping that with Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski. I think they'll have better runs today. Their intermediate success this year has not been great, so I wouldn't put those guys as must-haves. But the 2 drivers for Penske I would have as a must-have: Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney. Blaney obviously is really good on the super speedways. He's had 3 wins on super speedways in his career. And if you look back again to Daytona this year, he had a top 5 in the Daytona 500. He finished top 4, actually 4th place in his dual race as well earlier at Daytona this season. And he's had speed on the intermediates. He hasn't gotten the finishes on the intermediates because of his pit crew costing him double-digit positions on pit road every time, but he's ran top 10 throughout the race, and then again his pit crew fails him at the end of the race, and he ends up finishing 12th or 17th wherever he finished at Auto Club as well. So outside of that, if his pit crew does not fail him, if there's a late race stop today, which I don't think there will be, usually on super speedways they pit as soon as the window is open to the end, whether it's under green or whether it happens to be under a caution flag situation, and they're able to save, especially if it turns into a wreck fest at the end of the race. So I don't expect pitting to be as prevalent in today's race. I don't think there's going to be any green flag stops either today. That's a bold prediction of mine, but I don't think we're going to have a long enough green flag run for that. We haven't really seen that this year, excluding Vegas, and we had a caution right after the green flag pit stop, so I don't see that happening again right here. Same thing with Daytona. We had it in the 500, and we had a caution immediately following the green flag stop, so I don't think we're going to have that today. that won't be as bad for Ryan Blaney in that 12 team. And then Joey Logano, he also had speed. He ended up with a 9th place finish in his dual race, led coming to the final lap for throwing a bad block and wrecking himself, but nevertheless, he still got a top 10 finish and had really good speed. Even his backup car in the Daytona 500, he had speed there. He's had speed on the intermediate tracks. He had a top 10 at Las Vegas, and a 5th place finish at Auto Club, and then he ran top 10 at Vegas most of the day, but he fell back on that last restart with the green-white checker and ended up finishing just outside the top 10. But him and Blaney, they've had consistent speed on both the intermediates and the super speedways. That's why I have them today. Guys like Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, they've been great on the intermediates this year, but they were not good in speed weeks at Daytona. Because of the combination of these two style racetracks, they're going to mesh well together, in my opinion, at Atlanta today. I don't have those guys as must-haves. So again, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano are the must-haves. Definitely, at bare minimum, they'll get a top 10 today, in my opinion. And the fact that they're starting up towards the front of the field is going to help as well. They're both in the top 3. As far as the other Fords, for the sleeper picks, Chase Briscoe, who got his first career win last week, ran well at Daytona, top 5 in both his dual and the Daytona 500, top 3 in both, actually. And I think he's going to get a top 10 today, having a good run after getting a win a week ago. Eric Almirola, I think he'll definitely end up having a similar situation or similar day. He's had success on all types of racetracks this year. Again, top 12 in every race, short track included. But intermediate, Daytona 500, top 10s all the way through. I think he gets a top 10 today. And the drivers to stay away from, the Toyota camp. Denny Hamlin especially, and Martin Truex Jr. Truex never won on a super speedway before. He typically doesn't make it to the end of the race, even if he wins stages throughout. I don't see him getting a top 10, at least at the end of the day. And Denny Hamlin's just struggled this year on speed, even at Daytona, which is probably his best track on the circuit. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Again, like and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. I'll see you for a post-race analysis video that will likely be up on the channel tomorrow, and a race highlight video coming out later tonight from the grandstands, my view of the race. I'll share that with you guys as well. Thank you. Enjoy the race today.